Hello, I'm the Great Wizard Merman, and we are here to talk to you a bit about the new Pathfinder 2nd Edition playtest that's come out reasonably recently.
Yeah.
I say reasonably recently because it's been out for...
August 2nd.
Oh, yeah. So, because we are avid fans, of Pathfinder, well, can't speak for James. Yeah? Okay.
I think he's got one of the original comic, the paperback books when they first came out, didn't you?
Yeah, I've got the beta.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So we're going to be going through what's changed, what's new, what we like, what we don't like, and then next week is when we're actually going to be playing through the playtest, because they've got two campaigns, short campaigns. Where you gen level 1 characters and then you gen level 4 characters, and obviously you end up giving them feedback after you've done it, so then they take people's thoughts on board and possibly change it for the full release, I'm guessing.
So we will actually be running the full playtest book adventure path that they've got. It's just potentially going to be the first two, maybe the third part, depending on how quick we do the first two. Again, I couldn't say because it's totally new and I don't know how quick the players are going to get through it. I will be your illustrious, fairly disappointing DM for the next 5 weeks after this.
I think you'll be fine.
But yeah, I'm sure I'll be fine. But yeah, so
Anyway.
we've gone through and we've obviously either finished creating our characters or started creating our characters.
Yeah.
James may be creating his character.
Oh, I forgot because we had the last time. So we did our characters, and we last night we were sitting and doing them. On my fourth one, I have not put on the magic or the items. I think that we've got.
Oh yeah, because we get magic items.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
So-
not put those on yet.
So for the purpose of the it's fine. So for the purpose of the playtest, instead of having one group of characters that you run through the whole adventure path, the Doomsday Dawn adventure path has been set up in such a way that you play a variety of different characters with different rules when you create them, so that they can get a good variety of different characters played during the playtest. So you have first level characters that are designed that you come back to, and then you level up to the appropriate level later in the campaign. Then you've got around the point you're probably about second or third level. You then make some fourth level characters that are different for the next part. There's about 6 or 7 different parts to the adventure path, so that you get a few chances at different intervals to play these characters.
Mm-hmm.
And each time it gives you a guideline on this is the equipment they should have. These are the different items they should have by this point in the game, and they can choose from certain lists of items.
Yeah, I just realised I didn't actually put out my post. I didn't say that on live.
So that's what I was doing now.
Whoa, Merlin,
There's
whoa.
no one watching us.
Whoa.
It's fine. It's fine. Well, maybe. We'll find out soon enough.
I think what I'm going to have is, because I'm such a someone who's been playing that path, or the first Pathfinder, for about 7 years, is remembering to use a new terminology for things. So I keep saying races, and it's not race, it's ancestry. And I still keep calling it race.
Oh yeah, it's ancestry. So it's going to be something that's hardwired into all of us. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually something that will be hardwired into anyone who's been a long-term player of either Pathfinder or D&D, and indeed most tabletop RPG settings. You play as your various races and things, but in this they've gone into it as it's your ancestry, where you've been bred from, I guess. There's a few interesting and confusing things about that, but one of the interesting changes on the subject of ancestries is the fact that you no longer have half-elves as a race. Now it's kind of a subset on human, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Same as half orcs.
Yep,
Mhm.
same as half-orcs.
But it's only those two that you can actually choose from. You can't go, oh, I'm going to be a halfling, or half gnome. I mean, I reckon that could have been an interesting route for them to go down. So, like, say you could, effectively do that, but I can sort of see why you can't.
I mean, I think the interesting fact about Ancestries is previously in like 3.5, 4th, 5th, these are D&D, and Pathfinder 1, so to speak, you actually ended up with a lot of stuff that you got for your race. Now it's really boiled down to the very bare minimums, and then you get Pathfinder playtest is very feat heavy, so you get ancestry feats, skill feats, and class feats, and within those ancestry feats are some of the more original core parts that people have been talking about, like dwarves being sturdy or hating uruks and goblins and orcs. Those are now specific feats that you can pick up should you choose to, but you don't necessarily have to. So you can really frame your ancestry how you like. So not every dwarf immediately hates orcs for some reason. Now you can have it sort of drawn into your background from that way, why you specifically hate orcs, and then take up that feat if you want to.
Or you could potentially take it as part of your racial hatred, depending on how the game goes.
Yeah.
But yes, that is something they've introduced in this one. They've added backgrounds, which obviously the original Pathfinder, you pretty much just went with whatever you felt like. But this,
but we also have some of the Pathfinders, if you have a DM that does that. So like for example, like the campaign we first started, we'll have a background where everyone picks a profession, which is just something to help. But did nothing more than it was all down to your own background and roleplay fluff. It didn't really affect the game apart from the profession skill.
Mm-hmm.
So another thing to note there with the backgrounds is original Pathfinder had an optional thing, which was traits. Backgrounds have effectively replaced traits and become an actual part of the game. So the traits in original Pathfinder they'd give you an example of something. You might get a permanent +1 to acrobatics, for example, when you make acrobatics checks based on balance, because you spent your life as a street urchin and you're used to running away from people or something. And that's kind of how they had backgrounds, as an optional thing, but it was just the odd stats here or there, and you could pick up to 2 based on the actual rules, whereas homebrew you could change things around. But now they've kind of consolidated that into backgrounds, this is kind of where you came up from. The book has several examples and several ideas, but it also gives you sort of a framework for how backgrounds work, so that you can tailor it to yourself, so you wouldn't have to use exactly the background you've got in the book. You can tailor it, or you can come up with such things to change how it fits you. So one of the backgrounds currently in the book is sort of a street performer one, where you grew up on the streets and you may have joined a circus or something. It gives you a feat that helps you balance better, and it gives you knowledge of the circus. As an example, you could use that base but change the knowledge of circus to something else if you feel like it would be more appropriate.
But hey, Louis man, hey, thanks for joining us, bud.
Hello.
Hope it's finally streaming again. Good to see you in the stream. That is, yeah. Thank you very much for that, bud. Yeah, as obviously I didn't get around to streaming on Thursday.
No, unfortunately.
But yes, otherwise, so we are streaming today. But so just a rules natter and what and stuff like that. So obviously we've gone through a couple of those bits which they've definitely added in.
I would say so. Another one is I would say for the original Pathfinder, when you get your character sheet, it's just like 2 pieces of paper. We found the extended Pathfinder sheets, when you get higher than 10th level, they are so much easier. I know it's a lot more paper, but they are so much easier for the amount of stuff you end up getting. So at the moment, they're done in sort of 3 pieces of paper, and they're,
The
landscape.
Yeah.
Not portrait.
Although they still haven't fixed the issue of not giving you enough space to write in stuff about like your feats and class features, because there's normally still quite a bit, a fluff to go with your class features. They have simplified it down, but yeah. I don't know if you can see that, but it's a bit of a mess.
There's also, so we were saying stuff like the equipment space. On the original sheets, you had if you remember, it was about like this much space for your equipment, and this one is even less space to write stuff down. I got to there and ran out of room.
Yeah,
it's about an eighth.
I mean, I can see why they have to try and keep it as small as possible, but
I do like though for the feats and stuff they've given you prompts of like levels of when to get things and stuff like that. That I find really helpful.
Oh
if
yeah,
you're
that
a
is
new player to doing it. Spells still kind of complicated. Same from the beginning one to this one. I think some bits they've helped, but just for writing them out.
I think they have simplified spells quite a bit, because in the original Pathfinder I found them prohibitively confusing, where I just outright refused to play Pathfinder casters because they just felt so awkward and clunky to build and play. Whereas they've simplified it enough that I find it easier now. It's less complicated to get all your spells and things. The layout hasn't much changed for spells really, but they've consolidated the lists. Instead of having like a list for every single different caster, now you have types of magic that each caster has, which is interesting. It's a good change.
But yeah, Louis, man, there are a couple of people missing purely because we're having a discussion about rules and such. Not everybody wanted to be part of that. So that's why we've got us rules monkeys.
More than.
Yeah, and plus it's just given us a bit of time for people to prepare genning characters and stuff like that.
Yeah, especially seeing as we need 2 for this one, not just 1.
Yeah, but just on with the casting, at least because I'm still yet to properly look into it because I haven't finished genning my wizard yet.
Yeah,
but yeah, when you were talking to me about how they've changed how you can do spells, so like with heightening spells, and such.
Yeah, now all the meta magic feats are now rolled into every spell now, so you can enhance them, or when you're a particular level or cast as a particular spell slot, it tells you in the description of the spell how it's augmented by the different spell slot that you're casting, whether it's the first or second level spell.
What's really also good is they've done things for different actions. So like every round you can do like 3 points of an action, and some actions take 1 or 2. I'm doing it by points because that's how I'm imagining it in my mind. And when you write the spells out, you write how many actions the spell takes to cast, and then some don't have one. For example, cantrip of read aura, it takes 10 minutes, so it can't be an action.
Okay.
Yeah, it's too long.
So you don't. So I've not put anything. Whereas stuff like prestidigitation is a 1 action thing, and so if I choose to, I could do prestidigitation 3 times, and that's me.
So, to take a bit of a step back, to take a bit of a step back, then, original Pathfinder was really quite a big system.
Catharsis. Hello, thank you for joining us.
So yeah.
Hopefully you can wade in on our little discussion.
Yeah. So original Pathfinder was quite a big thing overall. It started off with the basic outline to be able to play the game. There was a lot to it, and as it progressed, as more sourcebooks became available, as more things were released, it spread really wide, really quite quickly. There's rules for just about everything you can imagine, and aside from that, it exploded with third-party rules. There's homebrew rules all over the place. We've been playing a long-running campaign for nearly 7 years. Yeah, that Lucy is the DM of for a group of us.
And yes, not every character has stayed the original.
Yeah, so we started off with core book only, because we were quite new to Pathfinder at the time, and we were only allowed to pick from the
base races.
Well, we were allowed a bit more variation on races.
It was
classes.
Right.
The classes we had to stick with base, but because I was allowed to play an Azimar off the bat, and a friend of ours, we'll refer to him as Topher for now.
Yeah.
he played a pixie off the bat with his first character. But we primarily used the basic core rules. And as we progressed and learned more about the system and got used to it, we then started progressing into a few third-party rules, a few of the extended rules. We've even gotten to the point where we've got a few homebrew rules, including such a thing as we've had a siren that I've kind of ported over to from 3.5.
You made a siren. I made an empath race because that empath doesn't exist in Pathfinder, and I used some of the basics of that, which was as close to an empath. It's basically like using mental and emotional healing. It's a type of cleric. So I use as a base for that one.
But the thing to take away from that is that by the end point that we have Pathfinder first as we know it now, there are rules far and wide. You can fill cars with the amount of books available for it. And it started to get very overwhelming. A new player would see that there's so many books and it becomes very, where do I start?
Oh yeah, definitely. I would say as quite an experienced DM, I would get to the point where someone was like, I'm going to use this ability, and I'd have to sit there and go, can you please show me what source book that's from? Can you show me where you've got this item, or where you want this thing? And we're all pretty good. We have an app on our phone called PFRPG, which has quite a lot of the main books and like the main add-ons, not the individual like information ones, you know, the 18-page booklets, but the big books are all on there, which
all the source books,
which is I think is really helpful for like a lot of the stuff we do. And we've had like some characters who have been playing from right from the beginning, and you forget some of the things you can do and some of the places we go. I mean, not everyone. And initiative and fights do take I still think they take quite a long time.
Yeah, because it's so it's one of the things that they've gone into with the playtest. Actually, in the book near the start, it does say that, you know, a 5 minute fight can take hours, whereas a 5-hour walk can take seconds, because that's just the way the game works. You don't really need to narrate every step of someone walking. This isn't Lord of the Rings. But
I don't know.
A fight, you kind of need a little bit more rigidity to the rules, so that you know when people are injured, when they're dying, and you can properly gauge how that fight goes.
I mean, take for example, we will refer to our campaign. That's our experience with Pathfinder. We had that the month of October, right, was 10 months out of game plus,
and that's with us doing, you know, a session every week.
every week.
You know, and we do like, you know, 4 hours, 5 hours ish.
Probably average, I'd say between 3 and 4 hours.
Yeah, is
our typical gaming session.
So I mean, when I first started like genning a character, that was like the point for me. So I decided that this time around I'm going to play. I really fancy playing an Elven Ranger, and then I moved that to my 4th character. So I'm currently playing a Dwarven cleric. What's really good, really great, is the world and the gods are still the same, and we have so much like a lot of experience in the other one where like we had the gods was quite an important part for the game, so it's really easy for me. At least I don't need to sit and try and read up on new gods all over again, new deities.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the world setting itself has changed a little bit, but not much.
No, you can still have like what I'm really looking at currently is I'm looking at animal companions. You can still have animal companions and familiars and bonded items and all of the main part of what you know is there. I just think it's some of the mechanics that have changed, like small parts of it.
So Catharsis says, I've heard reviews worried a bit about cleric and healing dynamics for Pathfinder 2.
See, that's one of the ones that I was saying about. So like for example, I need to get my cleric out again.
Here we go.
So they've done it before now. So the spell points was the bit you've got. So on the spell page, how you was looking at it, the main parts you've got like the cantrips and the level spells. Fine. You also have powers, which is unique to each kind of spellcaster, which there are now 4. So you've got.
We might need to step back slightly for that. So with the casters now, aside from the lists of spells, which aren't done by class rather than by this specific set of 4 types of spells, Spells aren't just spells anymore. There's also powers which are specific to different classes for different abilities. You can't ever take a power like you would a spell. You have to learn it from a class. And that's quite a big differentiation that looked a bit confusing to begin with. But when you actually look into it, it's not so bad.
To a degree, I mean, for a first level caster, a first level cleric, so as I said, I get spells, powers, and I also have my channel energy, like so as you would to like a paladin or a cleric.
Yeah, so that still hasn't changed.
I have the ability that I can use heal as a separate non-prepared spell 3 times my charisma modifier. So 4 times a day I can cast heal, which is 1d8 for a character. But because it's pull, it goes to my heightened state, so I do 2d8. But because of my power of Healer's Blessing, it means that every time I can do 3d8 worth of healing 4 times a day.
Wow.
And I could use the spell heal normally is by prepared spell slot. So that means 6 a day I could do if I really wanted to.
That's a lot of healing.
Yeah.
So for reference with the heightened, so just to step into one of the things that Lucy's mentioned, heightened is using the spell at a higher spell slot. Like James said earlier, rather than it being a meta magic feat that you have to specifically get, each spell has it inbuilt into its own rules, where it can be heightened at certain levels by using that higher level spell slot.
So I mean, I think it's great and all, but I remember even as a first level cleric, you could only sort of use lay on hands a couple times a day and cure light wounds. For this one, I'm like, it's quite a lot of healing, but it does mean that that's where most of my things are gone. My character is designed to heal. Yeah.
I mean, I get that sort of obviously a lot of healing and stuff like that. I suppose if we were doing like long dungeon crawls, one after another perhaps, then yeah, that will probably be where it's at.
Do you have like the bestiary or any of the monsters nearby to see if the average of damage output maybe has gone up? Maybe, I don't know.
I have a couple.
Just as a thought, so that's one of the things.
Yeah, because maybe that would explain why the healing.
Give me 1 second. Just find one of the ones that's not.
Have you looked at any of the bestiaries here?
So
I have a little. I'm just going to see if I've got it on my phone.
Okay, so we've got a couple of things around here. So let's go with Ghost.
Okay.
So Ghost is creature 4. So that's going to be fourth level creature functionally.
Yeah.
So around 4th level, you probably expect, a couple of dice worth of damage, maybe some funky abilities. So the Ghost has its basic melee is 2d4 plus 6 negative. That'd be negative energy because it's an incorporeal creature. So that's probably about what you'd expect for around level 4. It has the ability Frightful Moan. So another thing to note is now all the abilities, all of the classes, all of the ancestries as opposed to races, they've all got keywords that fit things. The spell, this ability, Frightful Moan, has auditory, divine, emotion, enchantment, fear, and mental as its traits, which means it's something that you hear. It's based around divine type damage or spells. It has the emotional aspect to it, so if you're immune to anything emotional for whatever reason, wouldn't work. It's an enchantment based effect, it's a fear based effect, and it's mental.
Oh, that's quite interesting.
So it gives you those key points for exactly what it fits.
As a comment.
But yeah, so Scorch says, "Love you and miss you guys. James, still love you, even though I saw you yesterday." No. So thank you very much for that.
It's like, I wonder who that is.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
but yeah, well, thank you for stopping by anyway.
Yeah, appreciate it.
So it looks like the damage and stuff is still all sort of fairly
that's
balanced.
An average of 12 damage per attack if it was successful and max damage.
Well, I don't know what my general hit points are going to be like at level 4. I know what they are generally at level 1 because I've heard the different ones.
Well, the nice thing I'm saying is, like, me and Cassus were talking about this. When you're going up in hit points, it's based on your is it your class each time?
Yeah, your class plus your constitution bonus.
Yeah.
It's
So-
across the Constitution.
Oh, question. How much action does
get my
that ghost
class every
attack
time.
eat?
So its basic attack is okay. So we'll go into the action economy just for anyone who's not sure yet.
Oh yeah, because that's changed a bit as well.
In original Pathfinder, you had a move action and a standard action. Alternatively, you could eat both of those in one go for a full action, which requires the whole turn to do, whether that's casting a particular type of spell or using a full attack, for example. In Pathfinder 2nd, they've gone to a 3-action economy. Now you get to use 3 actions of whatever type you want. However, certain actions will use more per use. So your standard single attack, that's 1 action. A standard move is now referred to as a stride. That is done as a single action. So you could use 2 actions to stride to move up to double your distance and then hit something. Alternatively, if you're already next to something, you can just hit them 3 times.
However, bear in mind that each subsequent attack gives you a negative.
Yeah,
Yes.
so first of all it's a -5, then it's a -10 for the third attack.
I'm going to assume that there's feats and skills and stuff like that as you level up to help negate that. I'm going to guess, depending on what sort of class you are.
Yeah, I mean the other thing to note is now not everything has attack of opportunity. So whereas before you could be fighting anything, and if you moved away you would get an attack of opportunity.
Yes.
Now the attack of opportunity speciality is solely within fighters and some monsters.
And that brings us quite well into the other action type, which is sort of prevalent in the main rule set, which is reactions. Not every class gets a reaction ability, or at least not to begin with. And there are some spells that also have the reaction traits and action types. So if you are a fighter and you have attack of opportunity, you can use that as a reaction, which now reactions have a trigger, which if that trigger is fulfilled, then you can use your reaction type action, which doesn't use up one of your 3 actions. So back to the question there. So with the action that ghost attack eats, its basic melee is 1 action, and its frightful moan ability is also just 1 action.
Do they still get 3 actions the same as us as players?
From what I can see, yes.
Okay.
Creatures still get the same action economy as any player does, but again, they have to use movement as well as their abilities and things.
Yeah, the only reason I asked is when I was looking at like animal companions and stuff before, they get 2.
Yes.
But obviously that's partly because you have to use one of your actions to command them to do something.
Yes. So the minion trait, which is what companions have, means that they are dependent on your actions. If you don't use one of your actions to command them, they actually won't do anything. Or they might have they will revert to this type of action and this many actions when uncommanded. I've noticed in the druid lists of feats, one of the feats that a druid can actually take allows them to not have to command an animal, and they will still take 1 free action a turn, even uncommanded, to either stride or attack. So there are things to allow your companions and such to do things, even without you having to actively make them do it. And that's one of the things that I personally quite like about this new system, where the feats were always quite a big thing in Pathfinder, and there were reams and reams and reams of pages worth of different feats.
Oh, yes, they were.
Now,
so
rather
many.
than having confusing lists of just A to Z feats, now they've sectioned them off appropriate to what the feat is to do with, which makes it so much easier to differentiate them. You've got your specifically class feats, which are under the class, not under the feats section, because you take them as part of your class, no other class can take them. Only that class can have access to those feats. It makes it a lot easier to pick these items, pick these abilities appropriate to this class. And it means you won't get a confusing feat that's really only meant for one class in the long list and going, oh, that's interesting, oh, I can't do it. It just takes away from that. But it also takes away, sort of back to another thing mentioned earlier, it takes away from a lot of the, here's a really cool class ability. Instead of doing that, they just give you lots and lots of feats, which you can kind of tailor your class abilities using the feats, which is a really good way of doing things, I think.
Yeah, so overall it does make it a lot easier picking out what sort of thing you want. And obviously they've sectioned it out, so when you pick an ancestry, you get ancestry type feats, so specific to those ancestries that you've picked. And obviously there's ones tailored to your classes as well. You can pick general ones when you get to a point where you're allowed to pick one. But it just means that you could not create, you potentially not create the same character twice effectively, even if you go with the same class and same ancestry.
Yeah,
you could just mix it up and do whatever you want it with, really. And also one main thing, so when creating the character, is normally you do dice rolling to gen your stats, so strength, charisma, con, that sort of thing. Now that's optional. You can still do it, but they recommend using you start everything off at 10, and then depending on what background, what class, what ancestry, they all specify what sort of boosts and negatives and stuff like that that it gives you, and then it tailors your stats from there. There are a couple of free ones, meaning you can just pick certain boosts, but that makes it a bit easier and a bit more I suppose levels, balanced.
So,
that's the better.
It gives you balanced stats. So rather than having someone who's had an awful set of rolls and they have horrific stats across the board, and one person who's virtually rolled 18s on everything, instead of having one person overpowered and one person underpowered, everyone can have a fairly balanced character. It is interesting to note on top of that, you can opt for optional flaws. So you can actually reduce your stats if you want to, down to a certain point. So if you want to have a barbarian who's got really low intelligence, but your sort of balanced out stats, you've got some really good stats, and your intelligence is just 10, you could opt to lower that intelligence to 4 if you really wanted to. Again, that's more down to roleplay and personal choice. But it is an option that is actually in the rules.
Have you guys had a chance to? Oh, you're answering.
So ancestry progression is that
So ancestry progression. What it means by that is when you go through your list of what you get as leveling up. So let's go to something fairly bog standard. Let's find fighter. Fighter's really bog standard. Fighter's really interesting. So let's see if we can get a close up of this, and I can show you the table.
There we go, that's all good.
So the table now gives you a nice list of the things that you take. You'll notice that at different points it gives you ancestry feats. So when it says when we say ancestry progression, or that's something that's discussed, as you level up, whatever ancestry you are, so let's use the really basic human. If you are a human, you get a specific list of feats for humans and humans only. As you're leveling up your class and as you're progressing through the game, when you get to an ancestry feat, you can take one that's specifically tailored to your ancestry. So you'll be able to do something that no elf, no dwarf, no halfling, none of them can do, only the humans. We could go into elves. One of the examples, so in original Pathfinder, the elves had an ability as that race where they were able to use any elven weapon. If it had elven in it, you would be able to use that weapon. Now, it's an ancestry feat. So as an elf, you take the weapon familiarity elven feat, and it means you can use anything with the elven keyword or trait in this case. So that's sort of how it goes with it.
Yeah, I level up in human.
Yeah,
so human all the way then.
Yeah, as you're leveling up in your class, you kind of do sort of level up as a human at the same time, really.
Yeah.
Probably couldn't really describe it, actually.
Yeah, I level up in human. I level up in dwarf.
Yeah, boy.
But yeah, so sorry, Lucy. What were you? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm disturbing the chewing.
Swallow, Lucy.
So, for my 4th level character, I can have 1 first level item, 2 second level items, 1 third level item.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm looking at is runes. Have you guys had a chance to look at runes yet?
I
Page
haven't.
370.
Not particularly looked into detail at the runes yet, but
Just because we're there. So basically, it's saying now that like one of us in the party could choose to get craft runes where you can take a normal weapon and the armor that you're wearing and you can put runes on and you can add on enchantments to things.
Okay.
So stuff like how to etch runes, you can transfer runes from one item to another. For example, like if we found a +2 flaming scimitar, but you wanted the flaming rune on your longsword, you can transfer the +2 flaming from the scimitar to the longsword.
Ooh.
Stuff like that.
That's quite nice.
Potency runes. What I'm trying to, I'm just a bit confused as to what I want to do. So, for example, like, is me having a rune count as a magical item, or like it doesn't say it needs resonance points, which is a whole separate thing anyway. Is this one of the things because it says it's 3+, so technically I could get an armor 1 as my 3rd level, or
that's actually an interesting point to bring up because the way that they do magic items generally, obviously apart from that, is you have a pool of resonance points for your character, which is effectively magic power, but it's different. It's specifically for use with magic items. So, because the original Pathfinder got so inundated with so many magical items, people, could just go, oh, I've got this magical thing, I've got that one, just get ridiculous amounts. There was effectively no limit on what people could do or where they could go. So now what they've done is, you get a pool of resonance points, and each magical item that you get has a specific cost, for resonance points to either use or have active, that sort of thing. So it might be, you need to use one of your resonance points to have this, active like +2 effect, on or something. But then it might have, and spend a further one to do a special ability that it might have on top of that. And so obviously if you've got, say, 7 resonance points, depending on the items, you could have a few different items or, taking negatives. But as soon as you run out of those resonance points, even if you had another magical item on you that you haven't activated yet, you cannot activate it.
Resonance points is your charisma modifier plus your level, right?
Yeah. So obviously once you've done that, you can't use it. So if you had a special ability on top of, but you've got all of these boosts from different items, you can't use the other special abilities. It makes it so much better at not being stupidly overpowered, which I think is a really good move. And it's not that complicated either. It's actually really simple to figure out.
So with the resonance points as an example, with classes that use it, they have now added, along with your typical races you find in Pathfinder, so you've got now it's Ancestries. The Ancestries as standard you get are things like the humans, the elves, dwarves, halflings, gnomes, and then you've got half-orc and half-elf.
And there's goblin now as well.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that.
So half-orc and half-elf, you now take as a feat as a human to change you into half-human, half whichever one you pick. So that's based on your ancestry feats, not its own separate race. Aside from that, as Milan says, they've now added Goblin to the base race list, ancestry list.
Ancestry.
Need to get used to that. They've added Goblin to the base ancestry list in the game. Similar to this, aside from your typical classes like your barbarian, your fighter, your monk, all your typical classes you're used to from base Pathfinder, they've also added alchemist as one of the base race. Oh my god. Classes, thank you. Just going mad here. They've added Alchemist as a base class. So Alchemist, as an interesting point, speaking of the resonance, Alchemist uses resonance points for one of its main abilities, which allows you to make alchemical bombs, potions and such without using components and ingredients. However, you have to use a point of resonance to do it. And the bomb, item, whatever it is you've made from your alchemical list, it only lasts until the next turn if you use resonance points. So it means that you don't have to absolutely blast all of your cash that you ever get on ingredients. However, you have to also be careful about your item use because you have to balance it out with your class abilities. Although, as an interesting point, again, charisma is the base for resonance, charisma modifier plus level. For something like the alchemist that uses it quite heavily, the alchemist has an ability that means you are allowed to use intelligence instead of charisma for your resonance points, which is something that I imagine if you've got archetypes that come in later supplements, if you've got other classes that might use resonance points as well, they might have similar things that allow you to use a different stat for your resonance points.
But yeah, that's interesting because obviously I haven't looked at making an alchemist, but Leon is doing one at level 1, isn't he? Yeah, so we'll see how that goes.
No, I think Leon's doing his is level 4.
That's right.
Oh, right, yeah.
Lizzie's level 1.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But yeah, so going back to Goblin quickly, so yes, they have added it as a base ancestry. I nearly went for race then. Basically, because what's it? Is it now? Because I think it said it's been like 20 years or something or more. Since the last big event that happened.
I'm not actually sure.
Because I remember reading it somewhere. There is obviously fluff about it in the book, but either way, some time has passed. And goblins are now starting to become a little bit more part of society. They're still, looked at as kind of goblins, but
they're not vermin anymore.
Yeah, they're not vermin anymore. So they've upgraded slightly.
So, as an interesting point from that, because I'd not actually read any of the book fluff about how they change things. So, if this is set 20 years past the latest Pathfinder event, that's really interesting. Because the Doomsday Dawn adventure path that they set up for the playtest is actually set before the Rise of the Rune Lords.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And several of the events actually take place at the same time as some of the other things happening in Pathfinder adventure paths that are already done.
Here we go. Yes,
you do have to remember that Rise of the Rune Lords has been announced as the first adventure path for this anyway.
Oh, has it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
But yes, I knew I'd read it somewhere. But yeah, so according to the Goblin fluff, it's been almost 20 years since the end of the Goblin Blood Wars that scorched the Chitterwood, forcing dozens of tribes into hiding. Now, with new threats rising up, the many tribal elders have put aside their reckless ways in the hope of forging alliances that give them a chance at survival. While many have stayed to protect their homelands, others have become refugees, with some travelling to Absalom in search of a home that might offer them sanctuary in a world that does not trust them.
Aww.
Kill them.
Poor goblins.
Vermin.
But yeah, so just by looking at this as well, because it does give you bits of fluff as well, for all the ancestries, but which it does give you overviews, so sort of like generally how their demeanor is, what sort of thing they might be into. But more interestingly, is in classes. Say for example, the alchemist, the first one, funnily enough, it actually gives you tips about playing an alchemist, role playing an alchemist. And what others will probably think of you. It says it's likely, what it will be. It doesn't say you have to be like this. It just gives you guidelines. So if you go into it going, I have no idea what sort of thing I'm going to be like at all, this helps with that. So you're not just going into it completely blind, which I think is quite nice.
So, aside from the help with tips with that, the other nice thing is it says if you're an alchemist in this example, you likely, and then give some things. So if you have personality traits that you regularly define with yourself that you're used to and you quite like and identify with, you can probably find them attached to one of the classes, meaning that you can pick a class that suits your personality and your general preferences. So with the alchemist, it's got as the example, if you're an alchemist, you likely get a kick out of wreaking havoc with the alchemical concoctions you made and enjoy watching things burn, dissolve, freeze and jolt. So it does give a sort of if you've got somewhat pyromaniacal tendencies, you probably will like the idea of playing an alchemist. And each class has its own sort of little bump to it, and it gives you a good way of saying, actually, I think I'm like that. I think I'd like the sound of playing that class.
That makes sense. But yeah, so obviously there's loads of fluff in there, and it's got a list down the side of exactly what sort of things you gain, which actually brings us on to like skills and saving throws and stuff like that, because they have simplified that a lot. So may as well go into a little bit about that, being as we're here. So I don't know. You've got a blank character sheet, on. That's fine. So we're just going to show you what close up of what the character sheet looks like, so you can see and go what.
So
how many items?
that way. So the character sheet has a lot of little like circular bits on it. Sorry, still trying to. Yeah. So the character sheet has a lot of little circular bits on it, and it says proficiencies all over the place.
Which obviously, when we first saw it, we were like, "What the f? what is all this?"
So, proficiencies is very important to this. It's a spell sheet there as well. Apologies, I haven't taken as long with this one to sort of show, but it's kind of awkward to see that on camera in particular.
Yeah.
Not sure why.
Yeah, but that's fine.
Proficiencies is now a fairly core. Well, in fact, it is core to the way you level up in Pathfinder 2nd. So, proficiencies, I think, is a cue they've taken from D&D 5th, I'd say. Where
original D&D.
And original D&D.
Oh yeah.
So rather than having skill points that you mess around with and having to raise your base attack bonus and all that kind of stuff, now you have proficiencies. You will have a certain level of proficiency in everything you're proficient with, otherwise you're untrained. The proficiencies go untrained, trained, expert, master, and legendary. If you are untrained, your proficiency is your level -2. So at first level, because that is still a 1, you are at -1 because it's taking 2 off. That's if you're untrained in something. But you can never have more than -1 for being untrained for proficiency specifically. If you have negative stats, that will also apply, but that's, neither here nor there.
But one thing to take into consideration at this point, there are no restricted skills. You can use them all, and they have condensed them somewhat, but we'll get through to that.
Yeah. So after untrained, you have trained, which is your level, just flat. If you're trained in a skill, you get your level as a bonus to whatever your proficiency is. So weapons, skills, saving throws, perception, everything you get trained is your level. If you become or are an expert in something, it is your level +1. If you are a master, it's your level +2, and you can probably predict it. Legendary is your level +3. So it's nice and easy to work all that out.
Was that a chart? Sorry, I missed that. Oh, that was the character sheet that we were showing you, because it's easier to show you, what we meant, rather than just going, they've got trained expert, that sort of thing. So it's just what the character sheet looks like. So don't worry, Lou man.
As an interesting point, if you want to look at any of the stuff for Pathfinder 2nd for the playtest, as for example the character sheet or even the core rulebook, the lovely folks at Paizo, who are the ones that have published all the Pathfinder stuff, on their main website, you go to Paizo, you'll find it. All of the PDFs for all of the Pathfinder playtest stuff are available for free. All you have to do is sign up on Paizo with a free account, and you can download the PDFs for free. So anything that we've actually got here in front of us that is to do with Pathfinder 2nd, you can get for free off the Paizo site. Costs nothing.
We just wanted the books, which obviously cost money.
Yeah.
But
yeah, we are suckers for physical books.
You say there's like 4 around this table. I see 3 on the table.
There's 3. I've got 2 personally, but one of them's at home. James has kindly lent me his copy of the Doomsday Dawn because I don't have one, and that's what we're going to be running next week.
But yeah, so just going back to skills. So obviously proficiency, that's basically explained. That's quite, reasonably simple. The only basically the main thing they've done is they've taken away all of the excess numbers from everything else. So obviously, yes, if you've got magical items, or anything like that. So we'll get to that. Then obviously you still get bonuses from that, but you don't get here you get an additional +2 from this thing or that skill or that feat. So that way you don't get go, well, I've got all these bonuses, which means I think I've got a 15 before I roll. Now it's simplified so much that a level 1 character, like for mine anyway, I see there's A3, there's 2s, -1s even, but yeah. So it's just a lot easier. It's just a really quick case of going, I've quickly got this before I roll, and you don't even need to fact check it because you can easily see it. It's so simple. But yeah, so the skills themselves, they reduced the number of skills because there was a lot in Pathfinder first.
Yeah, and another thing aside from the reduction of number of skills, because you can do everything untrained, but you always get proficiency bonus to it. It means that you don't have to sacrifice skills, so to speak. You can choose whether you're trained in it or not, which is fine. But just because you're not trained in acrobatics doesn't mean you can't do it. So everything can be done, and you have at least your level -2 to everything. So it means that you are consistently getting better at everything, even if you're not great at that particular thing.
Cassus has just shown me the page which has got a list of skills, key abilities, and its uses. So there's how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 17. Have I got that right?
About that?
Yeah. Just double check that.
Yeah, 17.
Yeah, so there are 17 total skills, whereas on the original Pathfinder sheet, which I don't have one to hand,
it's about 20 something.
Yeah, it's quite a lot. Acrobatics is still a thing. So that's still same sort of things. So untrained, so you don't need to be trained to use it. You can have it for balance. Doing balance, escape.
That would be escape from things like. I believe it would be escape from things like.
Thank you.
I don't know if you
don't know if you're going to be able to see that from here, but yeah.
Acrobatics.
Yes.
Yeah. So they've taken away escape artist, and that is now in.
Yeah, just like they've taken away bull rush, grapple, trip,
combat
sunder,
Thank you.
all of that kind of stuff has been removed. So all your old combat maneuver bonuses, combat maneuver defenses that you used to have to massively calculate out with brace attack bonuses and strength bonuses and dex bonuses and size bonuses and everything else. They've taken all that away, and they've pretty much included a lot of that stuff into the skill mechanics. And then for things like Sunder, where you end up breaking weapons, they've now put that equipment actually has a break rating. So for example, if you've got a shield, it used to be in 3.5 and all the way up, you could use that shield infinitum. Now items have wear and tear to them, such as the shield after taking a lot of physical abuse will literally fall apart because it has just been hacked and smashed. So that's really interesting.
But yeah,
the other bit that I really like are the core game mechanics that's changed. So ever since I'm going to show my age, AD&D that I started playing, we have pretty much ignored the carrying capacities, weight limits, all the stuff like that, because counting up the pounds and stones and weight and stuff like that and working out your strength, it was just a nightmare and just really became impractical. Obviously, homebrew, you can't carry a piano on your back kind of thing. But
yeah, it was always don't take the piss, really.
Yeah. So, but now they've included the bulk concept, which is basically that if an item is a dash or an L, it's considered incredibly light and not really worth anything in weight value. Or if it's a suit of armour, then it might be a weight between 1 and 4 potentially, depending upon if it's like full suit of heavy or just a pair of clothes or something like that. And it's worked out using a system that's on the character sheets. He hasn't done his yet. And it's basically 5 plus your strength modifier. That works out your encumbrance capacity. So if you then carry items that are more than your encumbrance capacity, you suffer being slowed down, so you can't move as fast, your reflex save gets hindered. And then your maximum carrying capacity is 10 plus your strength modifier. So you can work it out from there. And then obviously if you breach your bulk capacity for maximum, you can't really move anymore because you're too weighted down. So it makes the whole equipment and...
I'm waiting.
What?
I'm waiting for my turn.
Oh, right. I thought I was back at school then.
Yeah.
Please, sir.
Want another one. And the whole equipment part side of it, now I'm a lot happier working out bulk because I don't have to sit there with a calculator or an abacus and work out every goddamn degree of how much a pen has a weight value to it. I can just take a simple, quick, easy look at it and work out what my bulk capacity is. Am I encumbered by it? Am I not? And it's so much simpler.
And that's just reminded me of one thing, actually, just quickly, when talking about bulk. Money actually has weight now. Only it's quite simple. It's pretty much when you get towards 1,000 pieces.
1,000 coins of any type is bulk 1. So it counts for 1 point's worth of your total bulk. 999, it's actually stated in the book, 999 is not 1,000, therefore does not count as bulk. So anytime you hit 1,000 coins, doesn't matter what denomination of coin, whether it's copper, silver, gold, platinum, 1,000 of any coins, 1 bulk. Which also makes it kind of prudent to try not to have hundreds of thousands of tiny copper coins. However, if you're carrying nothing but platinum coins and you get robbed, it kind of goes in swings and roundabouts. Where you're carrying big coins, you're making a big loss every time you lose it.
But yeah, so I thought I'd just throw that bit in there. But yeah, sorry, Lucy.
Okay, so I pick my magic items. I can't see where it says about the resonance points on the items.
Oh.
How do I know how many points they are?
It will specify on most of the items what their specific requirement is.
But it doesn't. So for example here, so I've got the magic armor, this one, but it doesn't tell me how many resonance points that is.
That might be down to runes specifically.
No, I don't think she's looking at runes on that.
Oh, it's just I can't see where it's.
Yeah, because when we looked at one, like when you said that was it the boots of the Elvenkind or the cloak of the Elven? No, so it was the cloak of the Elvenkind. It had 1 resonance point was to give you this plus to something. 2 was to activate its ability. Right, when you put the hood up, it does something. I can't remember what it was.
Okay, so cloak of the Elvenkind is a good example for items.
There you go.
Cloak of the Elvenkind in original Pathfinder and quite a lot of stuff gives you a basic +5 to stealth. That's what it does. In this now, they scale with you to a degree, or you can have them made at certain levels, is it?
Yeah.
It's made at certain levels, sorry. You can have them made at certain levels. So, the lowest level of the Cloak of Elvenkind, you get a +3 to stealth, provided you've put one of your resonance points for the day into the cloak.
I've got 1, 2.
For a second
4.
resonance point,
Is it only
you
4
can
points?
activate its activated ability,
Yeah, because you've only got that.
which you pull up the hood, and it gives you 1 minute of invisibility.
That's right. That's what it was.
Yeah. But you have to put a point of resonance into the cloak to activate the ability.
Yep.
Once you've taken it back down and your invisibility's gone for your minute or whatever, if you've got another resonance point, you can do it again. And you can keep doing that until you run out of resonance points. However, it means you can't use them for other things.
Wow. So this is the deep dark secret of Pathfinder playtest. You can actually push past your residency.
I did notice there was an
You
overspend.
can?
Yeah.
There's an overspend section on the character.
So you can end up in an overspend situation, and it becomes a flat D20 roll, no bonuses, no nothing, and you have to get whatever you're attempting to. Obviously, if you're spending 1 resonance point, you have to get 11 plus on a D20 roll.
Right.
Then, if you're going to do another one and you've still maxed out, it's 12 plus, 13 plus, 14
Right.
plus for that day.
Yeah,
What
until
happens if you fail? What happens if you fail?
This leads us on to failing and succeeding, actually, which is quite an interesting part now of Pathfinder. If you just flat fail, then no harm, no foul, you don't lose anything, you've still got all your items and you've still got your pool, but it still counts against if you then attempt again, that's another resonance point you're attempting to spend that you don't have. If you critically fail, then you cannot join to that item and all the items that you're connected to drop off.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Now, leading off directly from that, a critical fail can be a roll of a natural 1 because that's the worst roll possible on the D20 dice.
Well, I'm sure we're going to be seeing many of them with me around.
However, there is another way to critically fail.
There is another
There
one.
are 4 results to a dice roll now
Yep.
for a D20, not just 2. With your different.
I don't need more ways to fail. I've got enough.
No, more ways to critically fail.
Yeah. If you fail any check by 10 or more, or is it more than 10 specifically?
Well, if the DC was 15 and you got 4, which is 11 points difference,
Yeah.
that's a critical failure.
Regardless of whether it was a 1 on the dice or
Yeah,
not.
you could have literally rolled a 4 on the dice and get no bonuses. That's a critical failure because it's 11 points below the DC.
Yeah. Because I can't remember
Does that
if it's
apply
10
to
or more.
anything? Like
Yes.
skill checks,
Absolutely
attack rolls?
anything. Skill checks, attack rolls.
Oh yeah, you can now critically fail skill checks.
Yeah.
Before, it was just a case of a 1 isn't a critical fail, but a 20 isn't a critical success necessarily. But now it is.
So I'm going to assume then, on a ball on the other foot, the critical success would be more than 10 points of success.
Correct. So again, if it's 15 is your DC and you get 26, that's 11 points over. That's a critical success.
Is it 10 or more, or is it more than 10?
It's 10 or more. So if you get 25, that's still a critical success.
So another interesting point to note from that again is now you can get to the point where you can not critically fail on a 1 or critically succeed on a 20. If the DC is even if you roll a 1, if your check is actually 10 above the DC still, it is just a regular fail, not a critical fail on a 1. Conversely, if you get a natural 20 on a check, but the DC is more than 10, it is either just a flat success or even possibly just a flat fail, depending on what you're trying to do. Again, that's dependent. Like, if you're trying to do a 300-foot vertical jump and you roll a natural 20, the DM's going to tell you to piss off.
Yeah, that's good. No, you fail.
Yeah.
You can't jump that high.
But you're not going to get a critical fail because you are less than more than 10 over the DC, for example.
But so this then transcends to other things like spells now have critical successes, failures, critical failures.
Wow.
So, for example, I think I was trying something out earlier, and the fear spell, even if they get a success, they're still shaken. So whereas before, if you would have cast a fear, it might have done nothing. Now, even if they get a success, they get a status effect applied to them. If they get a failure, it's worse. If they get a critical failure, it's even worse than that. If they get a critical success, then the answer is nothing happens.
Yeah, because
okay.
the critical success cancels the critical success function at that point.
Yeah.
But it's very cool to note that even weapons, the whole critical for multiplying damage, that's changed as well. And now, weapon types actually have a critical effect linked to them. I'll put that.
Oh yeah.
You've also got stuff like just one. So like I was saying here, you can die instantly if you ever take damage equal to or greater than double your maximum hit points.
Oh, so that's just in there as a main rule.
Yeah,
Because they
it
had, like death by gross damage or whatever it was in the original as an optional sort of thing that you could have.
So, like, so right now, so my that's my level 4. So my other character, I think my hit points are like 14, 19. Yeah. So if I took that and then obviously that again.
So what? Like double your con score? Did you say?
Double your max hit points, but if you got 42, if you took 42 points of damage, you're instantly dead. No grace period, nothing.
Yep.
Wow, that's the point. Yeah, because that is my max point. Yeah, I should have put that there. Yeah. But yeah, so wow, that's pretty hard. So basically, it kind of really deters you from going, I'm going to give a go hitting that hard monster over there because I've still got a grace period. No, you don't.
Like I said in Pathfinder First, that was I think if you took is it 75% of your hit points or the gross damage rule?
50 hit points or more.
See, I didn't like that rule. Because it's one of those things where when you get to the point where you've got like 250 hit points, you take 50 hit points or more, you can instantly die. It's like, fuck that!
Yeah,
I'm so fucking hard that I shouldn't be worried about 50 points of damage. So it was a bad rule because it didn't scale.
No, we changed it to 50% instead of 50 hit points.
Yeah, because the rule did not scale well because you get to the point where you've got 300, maybe 400, depending on massive cons or whatever, and it just became fucking ridiculous because I've just taken a bit of a big hit and now I'm going to die instantly. Well, fuck this rule. Whereas now, because it is double your total hit points, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because they've had to deal your health in hit points and deal it again outright. You are fucking mincemeat.
Yeah, so that makes sense. I can see that. You've just been squished.
I'm going to go for a smoke. I'll go back in a minute. I've got to the page of the next thing I want to talk about because I asked. I'm not sure. This bit here.
Because I haven't filled that
I'm
bit
on
out.
that page as well, so I
But yeah, so quickly going back to skills, because obviously there's different ones they've condensed. So there is one just called Arcana, which obviously you had Knowledge Arcana in original Pathfinder.
Well, now I think all of them except Primal have actually got a skill next to them. So the 4 types of magic, there's Occultism. Primal.
Nature actually now encompasses Primal.
Oh, nature does.
Yeah,
okay.
that's how you learn a new Primal spell.
Yeah. So you've got each of them have their own skill next to them. And their own specific magic items as well. So you might pick up a magic item that, say, a wand of magic missile, and it's actually an occult item and not an arcane item.
Because I forgot about that. So just because you're a wizard doesn't mean it's like, that doesn't look religious, so therefore it must be mine.
Exactly. So it all gets covered.
Yeah. So so like Arcana encompasses anything to do with Knowledge Arcana, recalling a spell. There was something I saw before saying borrowing an arcane spell. Borrow an arcane spell, which is a trained thing, but I'm not quite sure exactly what that means.
The handy thing is now he can just go across to Arcana and find borrow an arcane spell.
It must be here somewhere. There we go, borrow arcane spell. If you're an arcane spellcaster who prepares spells during your daily preparations, you can attempt to prepare a spell from somebody else's spellbook. Oh.
Yeah, so essentially, if you've got 2 casters of the arcane variety on your party, he can attempt to borrow a spell that he doesn't currently know. Or, if he meets another wizard who's not going to come with him, but he has a spell that he really wants to borrow, but can't quite learn it, then he might go with that.
But the other cool thing is under that skill, you can also learn an arcane spell, so you have to actually do a check in order to do that.
Party nom, is that?
Oh, party nom, yeah, it looks like it, but greetings from Germany. Oh, well, greetings from Guernsey.
Thank you very much for joining us. It's not often we get people from as quite as far afield as Germany. So it's always nice to have different viewers and different people from different walks. So
so thank you for stopping by. So little discussion continues. And also on Arcana, they've got that as read magic. So they did have a spell which was just like, spell, read magic. Done.
Oh no, the spell's still there.
Oh, okay.
Read magic as Arcana. If you don't have access to the spell, you can still attempt to read magic. It just takes you a long time to do it.
Ah.
Whereas the spell does it far quicker.
Yeah, it takes about 1 minute per page. Okay,
I
that's
have
cool.
no clue about Pathfinder, I think. Well, so Pathfinder, if you've ever heard of D&D, Dungeons & Dragons, or any other such tabletop RPG role-playing game, Pathfinder is an alternative version to that. It's got a slightly different rule set to the Dungeons & Dragons, which, now that they've released the second edition's playtest, as they're getting ready to release a full version, that's one of the things that we're talking about. There is a lot of stuff. You play D&D. Okay, awesome. So yeah, so it's...
Oh, yeah.
Pathfinder came out during the height of D&D 3.5. D&D 3.5 went far and wide with loads of complicated and broken and overpowered rules. Pathfinder was a way to step away from that, and Paizo went one way, and Wizards of the Coast, I think it is, for D&D.
Yeah, I think it was Wizards of the Coast.
Now Pathfinder has sort of gone the same way as 3.5 a little bit, where there's loads and loads of rules and quite a lot of broken OP stuff. So now they've dialed it in a bit and tried to go simpler, and they're releasing the next edition of the rules because, they want to try again from scratch and keep going, step off from what they've learned. Even more overpowered than 5e multiclassing. 3.5 definitely was. Pathfinder...
But 5th edition, I didn't realise that 5th edition was so broken with multi-classing.
It can be. Again, it's if you know how to, you can.
Oh, okay.
But with Pathfinder, it got to that point. It did get to the point where it was... I'd probably say it is worse than 5e's multiclassing, because with Pathfinder you can get to over-the-top god-level power. You can have full casters with heavy armor and consistent 22 AC.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the problem with Pathfinder is you got to the point where if you didn't have an AC of 45, there was no point having an AC, because it would hit you and it would probably kill you.
Yeah, because obviously in the early levels and everything, having even less than a 20, was still fine. You could still do fine, but as soon as you started scaling up the levels, all of the things just suddenly like, how does a 45 to hit you, or even later levels, it's like 80 odd to hit you. Yes, it's gonna fucking hit me.
Well, how's the comparison? 45. Yeah, it got to the point where a lot of monsters would have plus 20s, plus 30s, plus 40s to hit you at later levels of Pathfinder.
Yeah.
And you just needed disgusting stats and abilities to even keep up with surviving. It got to the point it was a little bit overpowered. Now it's got a better scaling to it.
Yeah, it's simplified it, a hell of a lot way down, but also, it scales far better from the looks of things.
Yeah. So, for the comparison, when you went from 3.5 and 4 for D&D into 5th, they stepped away from feats because they wanted to simplify the game that way. So they kind of took the feats and made them a very optional, you can, but you don't need them. If you want to change things around, do a bit of fluff, you can take a feat. They're there. So D&D 5th went that way. Whereas
the highest I know are gods, plus 20 or so, and the next after that is like plus 7 or so. Yeah. It just kind of got ridiculous. After that point,
it got silly. So 5e stepped away from the feats and made it more about the classes and a few other things. Pathfinder was very similar to 3.5, but again with differences. But instead of like 5e, where they stepped away from feats, Pathfinder 2nd, the playtest is stepping into feats. So feats are actually pretty much the core basis for leveling up a character. However, they've split the feats to simplify them. So instead of having all these ridiculous long lists of feats that encompass everything and every possible denomination of skill you could have, now you've got your class feats specific to your class, which is instead of a lot of the class abilities, and you can tailor your class instead of having like massive long archetype lists. Or you've then, as well as the class ones, you've got your general and skill feats. And your general and skill feats encompass your ones involving dexterity, like acrobatics and athletics for strength and things.
And ancestry feats as well.
Yep.
But there's not as many of those.
Yeah, and then the last one, which we briefly discussed before, was the ancestry feats, where instead of race, they call your race an ancestry. So you have a human ancestry as a human, you have an elven ancestry as an elf, and each one has feats specifically for that race. So Pinon says, I feel like D&D has quite a heavy impact with some feats. Of course, a lot are just meh, but some really loosen up stuff like ritual casting feat and such things. Weird Pathfinder seems complicated, lol. Yeah, so I do agree. D&D uses feats to give you a little bit of flexibility, but they're not required to do the class. Pathfinder does initially look complicated, and especially if you're going from D&D 5th into the playtest, they're a very different ballgame.
Yeah.
But if you looked from D&D 5th to first Pathfinder, so original Pathfinder, you'd find it's not as far away. If you knew 4th edition or even 3.5, and then you looked at Pathfinder, you'd see they're very, very close. You've got things like in D&D 3.5 and 4, they actually use spot checks rather than perception, but that's only a small divergence in the settings. But then 5th and 2nd playtests are very, very different.
Thank you very much for the follow, and I've just realised the image is over the layer of the... You could just see tails behind Pathfinder book.
Just
But thank you very much, buddy.
But yeah, so the two systems are very, very different now, but they will look a lot easier to figure out if you look back at where they came from and go into the next one.
Yeah, but obviously if you looked at, original Pathfinder and then compare it to the 2nd edition, which you can get the PDFs from Paizo, then you'll see that there is a massive difference in, how complicated each one is. Like original Pathfinder, just looks ridiculously daunting. Like you've got a ridiculous amount of paperwork on your desk.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I don't even think I could look at it. Whereas, the 2nd edition, it's kind of gone, let's remove like half of this stuff and put it in the bin.
Yeah.
It's pretty much just the way to put to look at it.
Yeah, and like Merlin was saying before, you have skills on skills on skills on skills in Pathfinder first. You have 23, 24 odd skills.
It was I think it might have been more than that.
There's quite a long list of skills. Now they've just sucked them all in together. Instead of having climb, swim,
the trip,
so instead of
grapple, even disarm, is all under athletics now.
So instead of having climb, swim, combat maneuvers, and then going into combat maneuvers of grapple, breaking grapple, instead of having all that stuff and loads and loads of rules attached to each one, they've just got it all in athletics, and you make athletics checks. You want to grab this guy and stop him attacking you. Awesome. Make an athletics to grab him. Someone's grabbed you and you want to try and break out. Awesome. Use an athletics to try and break out. And it just takes away all those different rules for every single thing and just gives you an easier, more simple starting point.
Because I was just looking at different ones that they've condensed down. So like lore, for example, you used to have knowledge religion, knowledge nature, knowledge geography, knowledge this
Ability,
and that. Whereas they've now just got lore, and obviously basically when you get trained in it, you have to specify specifically what lore, but there isn't a defined list.
So the other little point about that is laws, the old style knowledges, a lot of them are actually subsumed into other things. So if we look here quickly, you used to have spellcraft and knowledge arcana, which that's two separate things for more or less the same thing, which just gets annoying. Now you roll arcana, and that also includes learning spells, borrowing spells, and a few other things. So it takes all of that away. Another example is you have knowledge and ability, knowledge history, knowledge, a few other things like that. Now you have society. You have a general knowledge of society. So when you want to learn about nobility, local areas, all that kind of thing, you just roll society. And it takes 3, 4, 5 different knowledges. Roll it into one. Just
that's
take it
also
away.
literacy as well. Because when you're trained in it, you can use it to create forgeries, decipher writings. You know that, and also it doesn't say here, but it is for learning help learning languages and identifying languages as well.
Well, that's cool.
Because there's a bit about languages later in the book. Because I was trying to find out about how you learn them. It's basically mainly done by skill feats, but if you wanted to pick up bits about languages throughout the thing, apparently you can use society to try and do that, like the literacy checks in original Pathfinder.
No, I do like that. That's a good way of doing it.
Party Nom has a thing here. So just in perspective, so for the looks like a 3.5 character, not 3.5, 5th edition character.
Oh yeah.
Half Elf Paladin Sorceress, 22 AC, +5 with reaction shields, with certain Paladin spells doubling in duration, blah blah. How much more broken was 3.5, and in comparison, how broken is Pathfinder? Or let's say, would it be possible to recreate my cute Half Elf Paladin Sorceress in Pathfinder? Yes. So you can make the Paladin Sorcerer in particular in first Pathfinder. You could make one. You could do it
very
just
easily.
flat out. You'd go, say, 10 levels in Sorcerer, 10 levels in Paladin, or you do it 1 level in each at a time, and you would get all of the abilities all the way up to the 10th level Paladin, 10th level Sorcerer. The other thing about Pathfinder in the first edition, you could go well above 20th level very easily.
Actually, wait, can you multi-class in this?
You can, but I believe there's a specific thing about it which you'd have to have a quick look at.
I'm gonna have a look at the
that's one of the
index.
ones I wasn't sure about.
Yeah. So in first Pathfinder, multi-classing was easier than D&D 5th because you just go, I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna be this class. If you really wanted to, which I wouldn't recommend because you'd be shit in everything, you could have 1 level in every basic class. The only restriction is alignment, where you can't be a chaotic monk, but you also couldn't be a lawful barbarian, I think it was.
Yeah.
Which that was the only thing that would stop you multiclassing in things like those things. Other than that, you had free reign, so you could multiclass into absolutely anything you wanted. And then you had all the archetypes on top, meaning that you could have skills on skills, you could have every skill in the game, and you would just be broken. 3.5 was very similar in that you could just go absolutely nuts and make anything you want. It even made it easier to homebrew classes, because each one actually had books that tell you how to make classes. Yes. Alignment is a lot less important these days, because a lot of systems have started finding that alignment is very restricting. However, there's still certain alignment restrictions, but only in regards to clerics. I don't know if it was the same in in D&D 3.5. In Pathfinder First, it was the same as this, ish. And I think in 5th edition it is similar as well. Clerics have to be within a certain alignment increment of their god or deity. They weren't allowed to be more than 1 step on only 1 axis. So if you have a completely lawful good god, you could either be lawful neutral or neutral good. You could not be any other alignment as a cleric. In this one, they've done it a slightly bit differently, where each god has a list of alignments they will accept. So one of the examples that we know very well, because she features quite prominently in a campaign we play regularly, the goddess Sarenrae is a neutral good deity.
Yeah.
In this version of Pathfinder, so in Pathfinder 1, you could be lawful good, chaotic good, or flat neutral. Now, you are restricted to playing a good character of any of the law chaos axis. You can be lawful, chaotic, or neutral good. You cannot be less than good for Sarenrae. But that's the only restriction on alignments in the entirety of Pathfinder 2nd.
What's quite good, so Nethys is flat neutral, right? And to be a Nethys cleric, you can be neutral good, lawful neutral, neutral chaotic neutral, or neutral evil.
Yeah, so you
quite
can.
Nice.
you can go anything that isn't lawful good, or completely lawful and alignment, or like completely evil and alignment, or whatever.
Yeah. So if everyone there's a minimum of 2 that you can have. Squash traffic is still quite free reign. Most of them are higher than that.
Okay.
Yeah. And
so-
Party Noms hit it on the head there. You are right. When it comes to divine entities, it would be very weird for a cleric to start stealing when they pray to a lawful deity.
yeah.
Exactly the point, and that's where they went with clerics, because they're very, very my deity.
Merlin's found the multi-classing thing.
Yes, I have. It looks like it's all runs under the same thing as like prestige classing. So even though it says multi-class and prestige and stuff like that, it doesn't specifically say. But just by looking at it, so say like if you went wizard, obviously allows you to dabble in arcane magic. It says, obviously in the archetype, archetypes with a multi-class trait represent diversifying or training into another class of specialties. You can't select a multi-class archetype's dedication feat if you're a member of the class of the same name. For instance, a fighter can't select the fighter dedication feat. So say if you were a fighter and you want to multi-class into wizard, then you effectively go, right, wizard, because it's got feat 2, 4, 6, 8, 12. So it looks like you basically just so you just basically start leveling up in that, and then you gain additional stuff that way, so it doesn't inundate you. You just basically get additional abilities as such.
Yeah. So again, it steps back into that whole, we're using feats as your core mechanic for most of the stuff, but instead of having 2 separate lists of abilities that you take from, whichever level you go, you get that thing. Now you level up in your class and you take a feat to give you the extra stuff from different classes.
Yeah, because you've got now Cavalier, Cleric multi-class, Fighter multi-class, Grey Maiden prestige, Pirate, Rogue, and Wizard. So yeah, that it seems fairly simple to do. Whereas before, you just basically go, right, I'm going to multi-class into this ability, into this one, and then just start leveling up in that one as well, while trying to figure out what bonuses you got to that with your original ones.
So Party Nom says, Paladins 2, for my players I allowed them to pick any class, any alignment, even Chaotic Evil Paladins, which both died when they tried to murder someone and got caught by the guards. Yeah.
Well, those are anti-paladins.
Yeah. So that's one of the good things that we quite liked about Pathfinder, because even though Paladins have to stick to their deity's alignment, they actually did create an alternative Paladin class called the Anti-Paladin, which allows you to play evil Paladins, rather than trying to use a good ability as an evil paladin, even though you're an evil deity following paladin, which just made no sense.
Yeah, so you just flipped everything on its head. I'm evil, therefore I'm detecting good and smiting good and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so they've got a full list for anti-paladin. So that's a good way of looking at it. So Party Nom says, anyway, so feats are more or less like a skill tree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a very good way of looking at it. And each class has its own skill tree at that point, and then it becomes a little bit like RPG games where you get your specific skill trees. But then, by the looks of it for multi-classing, that's one where you can go, I'm going to start a different skill tree that is specific to something else, but I still get my basic things on the first skill tree.
Oh, hang on. Oh no. Okay, sorry, I lied. So you were right. Like how you put it. So yeah, applying an archetype requires you to spend your class feats on archetype feats instead of class feats. Start by finding the archetype that best fits your character concept and select the archetype's dedication feat using one of your class feat choices. So once you have that dedication feat, you can select any feat from that archetype in place of a class feat as long as you meet its prerequisites. So yeah, so it does just basically just merge in. So it doesn't mean that you have to go like beyond 20th level or anything like that. It's just bolted in there.
Yeah, because you take your list of stuff and you get this feat and this feat at level 2. You get this feat and this feat at level 3, and you get your different types of feats: class, ancestry, and general and skill. When you get to your class ones, instead of taking your fighter class feat, you go, yeah, I'm a fighter and I get basic fighter stuff, but I want to take some wizard stuff, so I'm going to go. At this one, I'll get my skill feat, and I'm going to take a wizard specialization feat, or dedication feat, sorry. And then you do that as and when. You just pick and choose, and you just take out the bits you don't want at class, and put in the stuff you do want.
Yeah. So actually, that adds yet another layer of customization, because already you could make two different fighters. Two fighters with the same same archetype. Same ancestry. But they could be very different because two different people will make them differently. But then you can go even further by going, actually, I'm going to make this one a multi-class one, and start bolting in different bits, different levels.
And whereas in original Pathfinder, to have different classes like a fighter that uses magic, or a paladin that is more combat heavy, or you might have a wizard that has some combat abilities. Now the way they've done it is... now the way they've done it is you can have your fighter, and you can keep going in your fighter.
Sorry.
But we can slot in magic, and you can be a magic fighter. Which is awesome.
A little off topic. Any of you know what the names of the 4 Riders of the Apocalypse are?
I do.
It's like, obviously there's war, death,
No.
pestilence.
Actual
You've
names.
got
the actual names.
War, famine, pestilence, death.
Oh, well.
But what they're talking about is like
actual names.
Apollyon.
Hang on, that's one That's my one I got.
This is what I'm trying to remember off the top of my head before I look. You've got like Apollyon, Charybdis or Charybdion or something. But I don't remember the others.
Okay.
Apollyon,
Sharon?
Cezuriel, Sharon, and Trelmerixian.
Yeah, Trelmerixian, yeah.
So yeah.
That's one of the ones I've got. So I've got the Pathfinder campaign, the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
Yeah.
From the first.
What a coincidence!
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's one I use in our in the campaign we're with, because one of the big bosses they're fighting is the 5th Horseman of the Apocalypse, which is known as Death, but we've got them as the first evil, which was the first demon ever created. So that's the big boss they're fighting.
Oh, thanks a lot. Also, we were actually just helping you out with the names.
Yeah, it's fair.
Obviously, if you need a spelling, we've got that written down.
Yeah.
In fact, in a second, you could probably write it, or I could write it, whichever one, into the chat.
Oh yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah. I will put that in the chat so that way you've got the right spelling.
We just had one of the guys asking, and then they asked, really off topic. I said a little off topic. Would you know the name of the 4 Riders of Horsemen of the Apocalypse? And I actually have one of the Pathfinder inserts, which is the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. So this is why I just went and got it so I could tell them.
Yeah. So what was that?
Yeah.
Is that S?
Yeah.
Azurion.
We are more than willing to help. So,
Hey, what's it? S?
and it happens that you have asked the
A-Z.
right people.
Yeah, Azuriel.
Yes,
That's
Azuriel.
war.
Yeah.
That's war. That's death. I think that's
Apollyon
pestilence.
is,
And
pestilential famine.
famine. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm literally putting in which one is which as well, so that's going to be really handy.
But this one you can get as a free download, because it's this one's a part of the Book of the Damned series. So I have the Horsemen of the Damned, I have the Devil part of it, which is like the
So
demon
Apollyon is
fighters,
pestilence. Yeah.
and I'm trying
Crown
to
is
find the
death.
first one, which
Azuriel
is
is
all about
war.
the Book of the Damned.
Yeah,
And Trelmerixian is famine.
Farron. Yeah, it's got it here as well.
They have really cool.
Well, it's just because the writing's really like confusing.
Yeah.
It's the style.
Yeah, I like because it's even got little pictures of them.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I wanted a capital letter there, you bastard.
Okay. Yeah. So there you go. So, but yeah, you can find these online.
Yeah.
There we go.
And
Done.
you are welcome. We're always happy to help. And you happen to ask just the right group that question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And well, being as you've gone for your city break, I'm going to go for mine.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. I'm allowed.
Fuck's sake, smoking wizard Merlin.
Just quickly, the backgrounds for the 4th level characters, do they also have to be from the book?
Nope.
No.
Backgrounds at 4th level can be any background from the book.
Any of them. I'll be back in a moment.
Okay. So the question I was going to ask, just because that was the second point. So I was looking at page 296, just because my hand's gone a second. So this is at the bottom of our sheets. You have actions and activities and reactions and free actions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not too sure what kind of stuff to write in there.
Okay. For the sheet where it says actions and reactions, I believe that's more set up for you to write specific actions to your class.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as an example, the monk gets the action Flurry of Blows. And the barbarian, at 1st level with feats, can take Sudden Charge.
Okay.
And those are actions specific to those classes, which you can write down if you're going to use something regularly. So that you've got it at the bottom where you can go, this is something I use regularly, how do I do it immediately?
Yeah, I mean, another good example is with shields now, you have to use the action Raise Shield,
Yeah.
which then grants you the AC bonus and everything else.
Yeah, instead of just having it as a permanent overarching thing.
Mm.
So with the various actions and things that are considered your standard actions, because those are available to everyone, you can either memorize them, which we will eventually probably, or you can just get printouts of the list of the basic actions and just use those.
Yeah, maybe that's something we'll do before next week. That
Oh,
might be
yeah.
a good idea
Probably a
to
good
do.
idea.
So I've got to. I'm looking at my 4th level character here. Put that 4 there. So I've got one of my actions is Hunt Target, which is my class ability.
Yep.
But I haven't written anything else because I'm not sure what to put there.
So it is possible. Oh, excuse me. It is possible that it's worth putting a page number or writing it maybe on the other side of the sheet. I don't know if the
I know
double-sided
Hunt
thing now.
Target is on my class feed. That's fine.
But yeah, if the action has or you need to remember what the action is to do it, or if it's 2 actions, 3 actions, whatever, that's probably a good place to put that so that you know off the bat. You can just go, it's this many actions, I can still do these actions. But that's generally what you're going to write in there.
Okay, I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah.
So let's see. So it's basically stuff, actions that I think I'm most likely to use would be good just to put there to remember, kind of thing. So there's interact, seek, stand, strip. And the only reason I ask is because you have stuff like reactions are something that's a trigger reaction, and you can do it outside of your initiative turn.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, for example, like if I've got my bow drawn but I've not shot it yet, is that a reaction?
Nope. That would be an attack of opportunity, which is specific to fighters.
Okay. So then what is a reaction?
A reaction is something triggered by something else, which you have access to that action. So let's go into the basic action list here. One of the ones is aid. The trigger action for the aid reaction is an ally is about to use an action, activity, free action, or reaction that requires a skill check. The requirement is the ally is willing to accept your aid and you have prepared to help, which is a thing you do as an action during your turn, so you prepare to help someone to do it. So the reaction at that point is when your trigger condition is met. So say Merlan was attempting a check to disable a device. So he wants to stop a trap working. But you have the ability to do them quite well as well. So he rolls his check, was about to roll his check. You go, I have made the help action during my turn. I would now like to use my reaction to help him. As long as he's willing, then that's fine. At which point you use the aid action, which is your reaction.
So like I'll state it in my turn. When it gets to Merlan's go, I'm here to aid him.
Yeah, so you use one of your actions during your turn to prepare help. The attack of opportunity, which is now specifically fighter, is very much the same as the old attack of opportunity, but it is specific to fighters. And it has it here, so it says the trigger for it is a creature within your reach uses a manipulate action or a move action, makes a ranged attack, or leaves a square during a move action it's using. So once one of those triggers is met for a fighter, they can then choose to make a melee strike against the triggering creature at a -2 penalty. If the attack hits and the trigger was a manipulate action, you disrupt that action, and the strike doesn't count towards your multiple attack penalty, and your multiple attack penalty doesn't apply to it.
Okay.
You can no longer just attack someone as per attack of opportunity unless you have something giving you access to that.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine in the multi-class type feats, you may be able to take that, or you might get similar or alternative options as things like rangers, but I think they're trying to, again, reduce the amount of ridiculous amounts of actions that happen while people are doing things. So now you won't get every enemy and its mother attacking you when you try to move. However, you also won't get all the players and their mothers attacking when the enemy tries to move.
I'm with you.
And it's specific to the 5 specific people.
Hello.
Okay, so we were just talking about actions and activities and reactions and free actions.
Okay.
So what they're saying is just basically like, it's the ones they put here is just stuff that you're most likely to use. We're going to have before next week the basic actions and the other ones as well. So that I have on here, an action is for raising my shield, but a reaction is sort of blocking an attack.
Okay.
Because a reaction may not take place within your turn in initiative.
Okay.
So obviously free actions, I can do stuff like I raise my shield, I take a 5-foot step back, and I can see that Merlan is trying to disable a device, and I will aid him.
Yeah, that's
So
cool.
when it comes to your initiative, my last action, which is now a reaction, is aiding you as long as you want my help.
Oh, okay.
Yeah? Am I with you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Oh, I got it. I think.
You
But the
think.
one I was laughing at, right? So you've got arrest to form. Right, so trigger is you form. The requirements, you have to have a fly speed.
Mm-hmm.
So you attempt an acrobatics check to slow your fall, but I may have an excellent acrobatics, but I may not have a fly speed, which means I can't do it.
Yeah, I suppose because you
That's-
can't really, try and slow your fall when you're just a normal human.
Like, if you have wings or a spell that allows you to fly, that would probably then give you a fly speed allowing you to do that. Just very quickly, so Party Nom says she was writing a spin on the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, where they've got 5 horsemen in the colours of Tiamat in disguise as they're trying to reawaken the 3rd sibling, the Deathworm Null. It's going to be back after they've celebrated that huge advance. So apparently we've managed to give Party Nom a massive step forward in their planning of their campaign. So I think we've done a really good thing there.
Yeah, no, awesome. Yeah, that's why I put nice.
I thought something vanishes as she
Prepares a hookah.
a hookah.
A hookah is a smoking pipe of sorts.
Oh, I thought it was a hooker.
No, you know in Alice in Wonderland where you've got the caterpillar smoking that thing? That's a hookah.
But yeah. So that's all. That's
Good,
all.
I'm ready.
That is all very, very interesting. Another skill that obviously we sort of briefly stepped upon before was perception. So that was just a main skill. You basically roll it at any time you wanted to try and spot something or see someone stealthed, that sort of thing. Now it's more of a normal thing, but depending on your perception value, depends on whether you see certain things happening, and then you roll it for certain situations. And also in that respect, initiative has changed.
So yeah, initiative is very, very different, and I kind of like it. I think it gives more fluidity to it. So instead of having an arbitrary number, which is your initiative, and it's always this, initiative as standard runs off of perception. How quick you take everything in, how well you notice things, how you see everything that goes on. That is your basic initiative. So perception is initiative. However, in certain situations, you can use other skills for your initiative. So, do you mind doing mine?
Oh yeah, that's right.
As an interesting example, if you have a party who have managed to succeed stealth checks and they are sneaking around and the enemies have not seen where they are, the party could then choose to use stealth instead of perception for their initiative. Once again, conversely, with another option, if you've got a pair of people stepping into a ring for a wrestling match, they're going to grab each other, throw each other around the ring, touch each other in a homoerotic manner. They could then use athletics, because athletics is how you grapple, how you throw, how you do your basic wrestling. So athletics could be then used for your initiative. Then you might also be in a situation where you're trying very much to get the upper hand in a conversation that's very back and forth, and you're trying to diplomacy, and there's essentially a kind of social combat of sorts. You could use diplomacy. What was it? You've got
there's
diplomacy,
deception,
intimidation, and possibly society. So you could use one of those instead as your initiative, which they are, perfectly valid for that situation. At any point, a player, if they believe a skill is appropriate for the initiative, they can request to the DM, can I use this? This would be why I think it would be useful, or why it would be appropriate. And as long as the DM agrees that that skill is appropriate, you can use it for your initiative. I mean, you can't just turn around and say, I have a massive acrobatics, it's so much better than my perception, I want to use that for my initiative. Because the DM will just say, no, you power gaming shitbag.
Depending on who's the DM, but yeah.
DM has a lot of words.
Yep, yes he does. But if you're doing something like flipping out of a tree to sneak attack someone as a rogue, and you're going to just flip out of the tree to stab them, you could use acrobatics because it's appropriate. And it's a form of sneak attack. You could also, again, use stealth in that regard.
Just put it, because that's just reminded me like perception. One thing that we have noticed, in terms of the character sheet layout, is that certain ancestries, gain things like low light vision, dark vision, different senses like that, which is kind of common. There is nowhere laid out on the character sheet to actually write that in. So even though it's got the senses section, right here where it's got perception, and you put in your little bits and pieces to figure out what your number is, but there's nothing to say any other senses or something. Put it here. There is nothing. There is just a gap which we've used to kind of go right. Dark vision, low light vision, so we know.
Yep.
So I think that's something that we could effectively put in our feedback once we've done it. To say, that needs to be put in there.
Yeah, there's a few situations where we don't think there's quite enough space on the sheet, or they should have a space for certain things in the sheet.
Okay, so there's nowhere to put an animal companion, or mount, or familiar.
That in particular, even on the original Pathfinder sheets, there wasn't. It was only when you got the extended player character portfolio that you could. So that side of things, I feel like a good piece of feedback for them would be either release a character sheet for your animal companion.
Or a separate thing would be good.
Yeah, or have an extra piece on the character sheet that you can print off that is the animal companion.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea. Yeah, it's definitely a good idea.
But again, that's one of the things that they actually never had originally, which is an interesting thing to note.
Yeah.
Just because I've noticed it. One other thing. We all love it. Love it here. Oh, nice. Is that there was an optional thing in one of the later books, I think it was in the original Pathfinder, where you had hero points. Which did a small selection of different things, because there are some systems out there like the Warhammer, the Warhammer systems like Dark Heresy, Black Crusade, where you can use those points to go, oh, I'm about to die, let me not die by spending this point, or I can heal up a number of points. They've got
re-roll a failed roll.
Yeah, re-roll a failed roll. They've got something similar in here. It's very limited, but the thing that I took from it is that basically, you can use your hero points to stop you from dying. I don't think it specified anything about adding things to rolls or anything like that. I think it's mainly like, I'm a hero, therefore I'm going to spend a point to not die straight away.
So with the hero points.
Wait, freaking! Is this the first time you've not come out, Cassis?
No, there's a few times.
Oh.
Not often, but that's because that was the free for all.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm asking if
him and
Cassis
Lou have killed me.
I'm asking if Cassis is coming out the closet. Apparently not this time round. It's just Merlin.
Hey. I'm staying in the closet. Thank you very much.
Oh, they do the side games on the comment bar, so they've all gone into the Colosseum. And this is the first time I don't normally where I'm sitting is people sitting here, so I can't see the screen. And this time I just noticed that Cassis didn't come out.
Yeah, I actually kicked your ass.
Yeah,
No,
but
in
how
real
many
life.
times have you come out dead?
Oh yeah, too many. But I survived and you didn't.
So, hero points. Every character starts a session with 1 hero point. One hero point. Your character earns hero points for performing heroic deeds or tasks, and can spend those hero points to gain certain benefits. So, the GM can award hero points when player characters perform further heroic deeds or tasks, or when players do something special for the group. So, one of the nice things is, it does say, players add hero points by taking on at least one additional responsibility, such as bringing food for the group, or keeping a map of the dungeon, or taking notes. So you can get hero points for doing things for the group. So like bringing snacks and things, that is a thing that you can award hero points for. So you can bribe your DMs.
For hero points.
But then you've also got, it says each game session, the GM should award no more than 1 hero point per player character for in-game actions, plus 1 hero point per player character for out-of-game actions. So that is a maximum of 3 per session. 3.
But that's what's really good is because if not, if you're playing, so if I was playing an evil stabbing person, you know, for me, I'd be like, well, I'm not earning. How am I going to earn hero points by I'm not doing good deeds. But obviously, you would look after your groups. There's a mechanic for playing an evil character, which is still fair.
Yeah, and then when it comes to the using the hero points, there are 3 listed things. You have spending hero points doesn't require your character to take an action, reaction, or free action. Spending 1 hero point allows you to stave off death, which is awesome. Anytime you gain the dying condition, or your dying condition increases in severity, you can spend 1 hero point to lose the dying condition entirely, even if the increase in dying condition would otherwise cause you to die. If you have 0 hit points, you also go to 1 hit point, which is nice.
Wait a minute. Dying causes death. Right. Okay.
It's the dying condition. You go from dying, and I believe if you're there for 3 turns,
You start at dying 1, and then you make a roll. I can't remember what the roll is. I think it might be a fort save against the DC of the thing that took you to dying condition. And then if you fail that, you go to dying 2. If you critically fail that, you go to dying 3. If you succeed, you go back up the order. And if you critically succeed, you go back up the order by 2. The first time that you touch dying 4, you're dead.
Oh, okay.
and you actually receive the dead condition.
Yeah, there's a condition called dead.
Which is quite amusing. I had a bit of a giggle about it.
What condition are you in?
Yeah,
Dead.
because you've got the following conditions are crucial to understanding death and dying: dead, dying, and unconscious.
Yeah. So we can go a bit more into that in a bit. But while we're still on the hero points, we'll just quick finish those out and then we can step on to dying properly. So spending 2 of your hard-earned hero points allows you to re-roll a d20 roll. You must use the second result, but if you fail, you regain 1 of the hero points you just spent, which is very nice.
That is very nice.
You can't spend hero points more than once on a single roll. It is a fortune effect, which is functionally luck. Finally, spending 3 hero points. If you gain all 3 of those magical hero points and still have them, spending 3 hero points allows you to act 1 extra time in an encounter. You can spend the hero point on your turn, to increase your number of actions for the turn by 1, to take an extra reaction when you've already used your reaction for the round. You spend these hero points when the trigger for that reaction occurs. You can't spend hero points to use additional actions or reactions if you can't act. So I believe if you have the stunned conditions to a degree.
Yeah, stunned is you can't act.
Yeah.
It's 1 sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have the stunned condition, you can't do that because you can't act. But anything that any time you're allowed to act, you could do that as long as you have the 3 hero points. 3! Trez!
Okay, so on here it's got when most creatures reach 0 hit points. No, it's 0. There's no minuses.
No.
They die unless the attack was non-lethal. Then they're knocked out for a significant amount of time, and then there's getting knocked out rules. When undead or construct creatures reach 0 hit points, they are destroyed. Player characters don't automatically die when they hit 0, instead they are knocked out. Villains, powerful monsters, enemies with healers and regeneration, and any other NPCs at GM's discretions are knocked out like a PC too. Yay.
Interesting.
And it is a fort save, so you got a fort save to go through. That's about key abilities if it's a Minster. Possible save, and then it just has the same thing going through dying, apart from there are some spells that kill you outright with death effects. But that's the same in Pathfinder 1.
Yeah, of course.
Stupid death effects.
Vorpal weapons.
So for dying, what is the actual DC for trying not to die, basically?
The GM sets the DC of your recovery saving throw when you're knocked out.
Oh, okay.
This DC is equal to the DC of the spell or ability that drops you plus your current dying value.
Oh, okay. So level of
dying
spell.
1, dying 2, dying 3, dying 4.
But what if it's not a spell?
Or ability. So, if you were hit with a weapon, I'm guessing it would be about weapons ability. So, like here, one would guess.
Yeah, that I might have to look into into a bit because that seems a bit weird.
What page is that, sorry?
295. If damage that reduces you to 0 hit points came from something that doesn't have a DC, such as an attack roll, use the attacker's class DC. Though a class DC usually includes a key ability modifier through the character's class, the GM may sometimes decide a different ability score is appropriate. For example, Wizard's class DC usually uses intelligence, but if he knocks someone out with his staff, the DC might use strength or dex. For monsters, the GM has a high difficulty DC of the monster's level.
So that's actually not as bad as you might think. So every single player character and every single monster has a class or such and such DC. It gives you the exact way to calculate it, which is not complicated. It is your level plus your specific key modifier plus 10.
For example, my fighter's class, which is my 4th level character, his class DC is 18.
Whereas my level 1 character here, their class DC is 14.
So, to use that as an example, if James's character started trying to murder your character, he brings you down to the dying condition. You gain dying 1. Congratulations, you're fucked again, Merlan. At which point, when it comes to your turn, you then make your recovery saving throw. Dying 1 plus his class DC, which, as Lucy so correctly puts, is 19. Because that's his 18 plus your dying 1.
No.
You then fail that. Because, argument's sake, shut up, Merlan. It'll happen.
So you've got to get 14 plus.
Oh yeah, at this point. Well, I am a level 1 character, so it
So
makes
you've got to
sense.
get 14 plus.
Yeah, but we use that as the example, so you fail that particular one. So you go down to dying 2. The next turn, you attempt another save.
Sorry, I'm role playing.
At which point, because his DC is 18 and you're at dying 2, your DC is then 20, because it obviously gets harder because you're dying more. You then roll a natural 20. Let's use that as the potential. You've rolled a natural 20, you've succeeded, it is a critical success. You then go from dying 2 up to 0.
Also, okay, hang on.
Oh yeah.
So you're at dying 1. You don't succeed. You fail, right? So you're reduced by 1. You roll a 1, which means you have critically failed, and now you're on dying 3.
Okay. So it is possible to go from dying 2
To death.
critical failure, dead.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Because obviously, like you mentioned about the critical failure and critical successes, so it basically goes 2 down the track or 2 up, depending on.
You've also got, if you take damage while you're unconscious, you do the same thing, but then you take it from whoever the last person that attacked that you received damage from.
Right. Okay.
So if I then attacked you and my class DC was 22, you then have to try and beat mine to live.
So, say for argument's sake, I was, I was dying, and someone came along and went, I'm going to make him die quicker. Stab him. Does that automatically put you down the dying track?
No. So
Isn't it an immediate?
in in your one to come along and stab you. So say I'm a 4th level fighter and I've hit you, your DC's 20 to beat, and then the wizard comes along and stabs you. Now, in the example that it gives in the book, because he hasn't used spells, the DM goes, okay, what's down in his strength? Well, my sorcerer that I created for 1st level is -1 strength. So I've just lowered your DC.
Okay, so it does. Yeah, so you don't actually physically die quicker. It just all depends on the DC of the last person that attacked you.
Yeah.
It says, yeah.
So that's fine. So I'm going to stab him another 37 times in the chest.
If the recovery save DC to new damage is higher than your current save DC, then you start using the higher DC. So if the wizard stab you, you still use James's.
Oh yeah.
See, that's something I think that they should look at, because that means that you can have a round of all the monsters twatting the person dying and nothing actually happens. I feel like if you take any damage in a round you're dying, it should automatically take you down the track one. I feel like that would balance it, because it means that you can't just have all the monsters go, we're going to make sure he dies. Dying 1, dying 2, dying 3, dying 4, you're dead. I think they could add in the proviso that if you do take damage while you're dying, you get moved down the track one. Just because I think that would...
you could then end up in the scenario that you just mentioned at the start, which is you've got 4 goblins around you, one puts you on dying 1, and then the other 3 stab you and you're dead.
That's why I'd say any damage in a round can take you down 1, but only once per round.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter if you got hit another 5 times, you'd still only go down 1.
Yeah, because it would limit the amount of DMs who are going to be, well, I don't like this person, I'm going to kill them. But it also gives an actual negative for the fact that the monsters are going, we're after you. Or like an assassin who's after that person, for whatever reason. I think if it's, I'm still stabbing this person, nothing's actually happening, but I'm stabbing them, makes no sense.
You should have more holes in Swiss cheese, but nothing is happening.
Yeah, that's why I decided to pick up on that, because I was like, surely it means you would die quicker.
That's a good point, and it is actually the sort of thing that a playtest like this is here to highlight.
Do we have many more points to cover, do you think? I think we're okay at the moment.
I think we could
probably talk for hours.
Yeah, we could talk for hours, but
I do think we've covered all the main points.
Yeah. I do think we have. So generally, in conclusion, the other point, just quickly. No, it's just about weapons. No, it's just a quick one. It's just mainly about weapons, because beforehand you have to have all sorts of feats and abilities in order to use certain actions, for certain stuff. You don't need that anymore. As long as you're trained in a weapon, then you could use whatever abilities on it. So, like, say here, the horse chopper. It's got the trip ability attached to it, so you don't need a special feat in order to use that. You can just trip with it because that's what it is. Like this great club has got backswing, which basically means it gives you an extra pluses on subsequent attacks. That sort of thing. So you don't necessarily need special special abilities in order to use special things, which I find kind of cool.
Absolutely. Say hi.
Hello, Diva Pamu.
Hi.
Yeah, hi. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us.
As an interesting point, I actually believe that I recognise the reference for that name entirely.
Oh.
Diva is the character from Overwatch. Pamu is Kiari Pamu, who is a Japanese singer.
Oh.
Cool.
It's a really random, interesting fact. If that is where he or she has taken the name from. But yes, we're on the D&D because it's the only one that's on Twitch.
Yes.
She said yes.
Oh yeah, so you got that spot on. But yes, the only one that's on Twitch because there is like tabletop simulator, but this obviously isn't a simulator. We're doing it in real life. So D&D is basically the only category that you can fall under, unless they change it anytime soon.
Well, Pathfinder, I think, is D&D.
Pathfinder is where it diverged from 3.5, and Paizo went, let's do something a bit different but similar.
Wow.
There's dungeons and there's dragons.
I know.
You were talking about open gaming license. Back in my day, Secret 6, you had the open gaming license.
We spent a week to do one round.
So, because you just got here, what we've been talking about is Pathfinder has been going for a while. As of August the 2nd, Paizo released the Pathfinder playtest. Not that we've all got the books or anything, because we're massive nerds or anything.
No.
But we have picked up the Pathfinder 2nd playtest because we're going to give it a go. We're going to playtest it. We're going to have a bit of fun, see what it's like. And we intend to give some feedback to Paizo to help them create the new system.
Yay.
Make their tweaks and things. But we've been talking about the differences between Pathfinder 2nd's playtest and original Pathfinder, as well as a few differences between D&D, and talking about a few of the new abilities, changes, and answering questions that people have regarding it as best we can with what knowledge we have.
We also talked about how we found making a character, because we've not played it, we've got as far as making a character, reading through the rules and discussing different things. I think it's been really interesting so far.
So,
which one would you recommend for a beginner on the rolling universe, D&D or Pathfinder?
Okay.
Pathfinder.
It depends if you like
we're a bit biased.
rules or if you like story.
Pathfinder.
Here's the really good thing. If you really like rules and getting right down into the nitty-gritty of all of that kind of stuff, Pathfinder's your game. First Pathfinder in that regard. Second is still playtesting, so there's a few niggles we have to sort out with that.
Yeah.
D&D 5th is actually really good for story because they're a lot less rigid with the rules and there's a lot more fluidity to story. So I will be totally honest, from a totally unbiased perspective, because I love both games and I prefer Warhammer anyway.
Here we go.
As a totally unbiased perspective, I think for a beginner who's completely new to dice tabletop RPG games, I'd go for D&D 5th first, then step into Pathfinder later when you want something a little more complicated, or if you feel like it doesn't have good enough rules for some things.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because D&D 5th, makes it a lot simpler, and there's less of having to double check things and less numbers to worry about.
And there's mostly less of double checking things because the rule book is incredibly vapid.
I would also say, so I have a different opinion to that. I think it depends on the group that you're with. If, for example, we had a new player that joined us tomorrow, we could rapidly and very intensively explain Pathfinder to them because we have the experience of playing.
Yeah.
So I would say it would really depend on who is around you. If you had someone with who is incredibly old school and plays, D&D Red Box, they could explain that system and that'd be the greatest beginning for you. It depends who you have around you as to what is the best beginner thing to play.
Thank Diva Pammy for following.
Oh, no, thank you very, very much. I'm sorry, I was in a conversation.
By the way,
yes, thank you very much for the follow.
I think Louis Man is taking my spot for the number one Merlan fun.
Why does this make you angry?
It does a little bit, because I'm the number one fan. I was the first person to follow you.
Yes, you still are, don't worry.
That's actually a good point. Diva Pammy says, who's the owner of the stream / social media? So, this here is our great wizard Merlan. He is great and wizard
But shit at rolling dice.
Yeah, I was going to say, or commonly known as the Great Wizard of Fails.
He has... Watch from next week for the next 5 weeks. We'll be playing Pathfinder 2nd properly to give it a test. You will see how horrific his luck is for rolling dice. It's hilarious.
So we decided that eons ago, Merlan's ancestors offended the god dice, the dice of gods.
The god dice? They are gods.
Because any system we play, he always critically rolls, maybe every session. Whenever there's something really important comes up, you fail. When it's something really mundane, you roll like a natural 20, the best you can possibly get, and I'm like, amazing, your shadow puppets could entertain children for hours. But
yes, please tell me about that painting. It's like, of course, I know every detail about that painting.
But you need to barrel roll out the way of a grenade. No, you're dead.
Oh no, that truck is about to run into you. All you have to do is a very simple dodge roll.
Fail.
No, I dodge into it.
So that's just a long-standing thing. So we got for Merlan's 30th, he has a tankard in the other room about being the god of fails of dice and stuff like that. It's just a very long-standing tradition for us.
But otherwise, if you didn't want to wait until next week, I do have a YouTube channel which has got all of our tabletop streams on there.
Everyone.
And you definitely want to go back and watch the Snow White one.
Oh,
yes,
Snow
the Snow White.
Just because you're in it.
You look fabulous.
Yeah, there was a Pathfinder module, for the Snow, which was quite new. So Snow White. Was it? It wasn't Snow White and Seven Dwarfs. Was it just Snow
It was
White?
Snow White.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on, they got
It
another
was
one.
the auspicious
We've got two
Snow
things
White.
before you answer your question. First of all, Louis, man, I am the #1 fan. Okay, now you can answer the
feel
question.
good.
Okay, so this is the Great Wizard Merlin. His is the channel we regularly stream on. He's on Instagram, he's on Twitter, he's on YouTube, and
Facebook.
on each one, and on Facebook. Sorry,
Oh, yeah.
On each one, look for Great Wizard Merlin, and you should find him.
Someone called Dan just suspicious.
I am
Totherdan. Auspicious.
I am the Dark Knight Cassis. That is my tag, my handle. You can find me on Twitter. I don't really post on it because I forget a lot and I'm awful at that kind of thing. I'm on Facebook as well. I've got a YouTube, but my videos are a lot less and a lot
On Instagram.
further between. I'm more active on Instagram, also as the Dark Knight Cassis. You'll find both of us there. We post quite regularly. Facebook comes up a little bit. I always try to do mine on Facebook as well, but I fail a lot. But we are always happy to answer questions. If you ever have anything that you want to check with us, we will generally reply on.
Hang on.
That's right. I'll just.
Oh,
post
you'll just
something.
put it. Oh, you just put something because obviously it's your name.
So it's the one directly underneath yours there. That is mine. We always try to answer. We always try to be as helpful as possible. We like people ish.
But yes, yeah, we do. We
yeah.
like interacting with people. We like like to try and help. So yeah, that's what we're here for.
You do have, I find the boys are very much, in every stream we do, you'll hear us talking for a while, and then one of us will nudge one another, then we reply to what people are saying, and then we continue in the flow of what we're doing. We do answer comments.
Oh yeah, on tabletop nights it does get a bit difficult to try and find the right moment to go, hey, thanks for the follow, or yes, we'll answer your question.
Yeah, it's because with the tabletop night we have to kind of be playing and we have to be involved in what's going on. So as best we can, we've started trying to leave gaps while we're doing things for their Merlin to actually answer and talk to people.
Yeah, we've done that. I think we're doing quite well with that recently.
Yeah. I think.
Also, advance warning. And one of the reasons I'm talking so much and answering questions is because I talk too much.
True fact.
It's
Fuck
fine.
you!
It's true.
It's fine because you are charisma.
No.
No, I think he is.
No.
No, to be quite fair, of all my stats,
Oh, here we go.
I have really good dex, charisma, and I suppose intelligence. Everything else is shit.
Ego.
Hey.
Oh wait, is this the
to be fair-
Kamehame ego?
to be fair, my strength is awful. Like, I have horrific strength. I couldn't arm wrestle a gnat.
That sounds like fun.
Probably because gnats don't have arms.
Yeah,
Yeah, but they still beat me in strength.
maybe.
But they do have a fly speed.
Okay.
Next week.
So obviously we also have got is it Totherdan?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Totherdan.
Totherdan. Before said auspicious.
Don't know how do you say it?
Auspicious.
Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, imagine yellow hair.
And we have got another wig for that one round.
What?
We've got another wig. We've got a better one.
Ooh.
You've got a different
It's
wig.
styled better. You're gonna look amazing.
James is gonna look fabulous.
No. Because we've got 5 weeks of Cassis running Pathfinder 2. That's what we're doing at. Then after that, James is running 5 weeks of Werewolf again.
Oh,
I'm well excited about Werewolf. Yeah.
We quite enjoyed Werewolf. Werewolf's fun.
And then it's your go Merlin to continue is it Pathfinder or 5th we did?
No, it was Pathfinder.
It's Pathfinder. And then Lizzie's doing Snow White again. So we have got a little bit of a wait until then. But still.
But still, we'll get there.
Yeah.
And then, eventually, what was it? Weren't we planning on doing the newer Warhammer system that you were on?
Oh yeah.
That's what
When we
next time round.
eventually get back round.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's my break month.
So we go in a cycle. So for reference, especially for new people that haven't joined us before, we do 5-week blocks to either try out new systems or go back to other ones, so that people get a good chance to see different systems, but it doesn't get stale because it's constantly cycling. And then you get new characters, interesting things to see, and it gives you a chance to see all these different systems and settings that you might see books for in a shop, but wonder what it's like. So we try to give you that as well as coming back to things that we enjoy as well. We have a rota of sorts where for 5 weeks someone will be our games master, dungeon master, whichever is appropriate for the system. Then after their 5 weeks, someone else will take over, then someone else in the cycle, and we go forth until we get back to the first person and go again.
Although sometimes we have had some guest appearances. So we had Mr. Destiny came and he ran Slay for 5 weeks.
Slay was fun.
And then from that we gained Burke. So he joined us for the 5 week session, then hasn't left. But he didn't join the last cycle because he's been away, and he's not joining the Pathfinder cycle because he gets back next week. But he doesn't. He wants the rest.
He got back today.
Did he?
He was on the same ferry as me.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. But
He's a very good DM though.
But
that'd be good.
Same as James, to be fair.
That's all right.
James and Burke are both very good DMs with their own very clear styles, which is another interesting thing. You'll see different DMing styles as we play.
That's true. We do have some people who are far more confident in DMing, which I would say would be me, James, Burke. And you guys and Lizzie, who's not on camera currently, would say. I'm not saying that you're not good DMs. I'm just saying you're less confident.
Yes.
Which is why you
They've
see.
had more
I agree with
experience.
that.
Which is why there is a lot of systems of Pathfinder, because that's a comfortable setting for certain things. And a lot of us try to do very different ones because we don't care either way. What we do.
The 5 rings.
Well, I'm going to try that.
I want to try that one.
So just to talk about some of the
Ritual Sudoku.
I don't know that this is Pathfinder.
Sudoku?
Yes.
Ritual Sudoku!
It's a meme at the moment.
I've done it wrong!
Hang on, I'll show you the photo afterwards. So we've got Rob, which is a friend of James's, has released a gaming system called Age of Steel, which remember we talked about that?
Yes.
So for my next run through, that's what I'm running.
Ah, okay.
Which I think is very much like Shadow
Shadowrun?
Shadowrun.
Was it Diesel Punk?
Diesel.
Yeah.
Diesel
But
Punk.
it's very like Shadowrun, but with a D20 system.
As a question, are we going to be one of the first people who ever get to play that then?
Not first ever.
No, one of the first groups to though.
Yeah.
One of.
It's out. He's an independent publisher, so you can buy it on Drive-Thru RPG, either PDF or copy it there.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone else has streamed it, so we would be the first streamers for the sessions.
So that's going to be quite an interesting treat for all of us, I think. You'll get to see a system that's potentially never been streamed before.
So that'll be interesting when we get around to that one.
Yep.
But yeah, so the point that I was going to quickly make before is that yes, it isn't just us. You know, there are other people which do end up playing with us. So I mean, so not all of them at the same time, admittedly, because we don't have quite enough room for that. Because there's quite a few of us now. Because there's
us four.
Us four.
Leon,
Lizzie,
Burke.
This
is Destiny when he joins us. He's guest though, so I'd say there's 7 of us regularly.
Yeah, seven regulars. So
we did have Tulane for a while, but he stepped back.
Yeah.
Because you see him in the previous streams.
Yeah, so a lot of game systems recommend between 3 to 5 players at any given time. When you have less players than that, it makes it easier to run with those people. However, it does mean that they're dealing with everything on their own, and it can make some things a bit out of balance. Whereas when you have more, it can take a very long time to get round everyone.
Yeah.
So
we've had both ends of the scale, but
Sweet
not
spot
on
is
stream,
5 to
but
6.
yeah.
I've just definitely say in my experience, my amount of players I like is 5.
Yeah. 5's a fantastic number because it's fairly balanced. You can make a good party and have all sorts of walks of life, and you can just go nuts with it. Really.
I mean, you guys have been there when we used to have minus me a party of 11.
Oh yeah, that was insane.
It was
rounds
so hard
took
work.
so long.
Didn't work.
And we were in a room. Well, basically in a room pretty much as big as this one with 11 people in, weren't we?
Yeah,
it was just around because it was on a table with chairs and other bits and places.
Yeah, we were all like squidge up against each other. Yeah, it was. But anyway, I think we should maybe sign off from there.
Yeah, so I think we have talked about all the major changes that happen in Pathfinder. So yeah, please tune in next week. Where we actually start doing the campaign for our level 1 characters, which we think potentially will take a couple of sessions.
I reckon looking at the actual book, I reckon it's 2, maybe 3 sessions per section. which is why I think the sweet spot will be to do the first 2.
Yeah, and then obviously we'll do the next one, which is with Jen's up their 4th level characters and see how far we get with that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, don't forget to join me and Cassus tomorrow, as we'll be continuing our Mass Effect playthrough. Yeah. And number 4, I think we're going to be on now. Yeah.
Yeah, our fourth session, not 4th Mass Effect.
Oh yeah,
Andromeda?
No,
We don't talk about Andromeda.
we're still on Mass Effect 1, but we are going to do the trilogy.
Yeah. It's our 4th session, but we're still on Mass Effect 1.
And then Thursday I'll be on early during the day to continue my Kingdom Come stream, hopefully.
He likes his Kingdom Come.
Yes, so much in that.
Deliverance.
I do think on here you have your times and stuff, so people who are new watching, they know.
Oh yes, so generally we do start at 8 PM on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, which is GMT time, based on normal sort of UK time.
British summertime.
Okay. Yeah, GMT, EST, whatever. There's a load of different names. It's ridiculous. But on Thursdays, I generally start at 1 PM. For me, anyway.
Keep an eye out on the social media. We will generally try to make sure we post up so that you can see when we're going to be on, and we usually try to tell you what we're doing as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. But yes, so otherwise, without further ado, I think we'll cut that stream there. So hopefully we'll get to see at least some of you guys tomorrow or next week or whenever you decide to come by and watch. But otherwise, it was good to see you guys, and bye for now.
It's been wonderful having you guys.
And
You have to get
I'm
up
gonna move.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to move.
Move so that
This
you
was
can-
the
Click the button,
worst
click the
ending
button, click the
to
button.
worst
Ah!